Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another brand new episode of System Link, featuring, as always, my lovely co-host, Mike Hazelton from the Xbox Guide. Mike, how are you doing on this rather cold evening? We're shooting here at, what's this, 10 to 10 here in the UK. How are we doing, sir?
Hey, yeah, I'm alright. It's not too cold here. My Xbox has been running in this. I film in the shed, and it's been running for about an hour, so it's nice and toasty.
Keeping you toasty. My lighting setup here should be, I feel like, putting out more ambient heat than it does. That's why I've gone for my old man cardigan, just keeping me cozy right now. Had no
What's
choice.
the job of LEDs? They don't put out any heat, so it's all
exactly.
Yeah, you don't get that effect anymore.
No, I know. I'm just projecting and hoping that it does. So tonight we've got a few different pieces we're going to be unpacking, and then our deep dive this evening is looking ahead to Switch 2. We had some news recently that's kind of prompted Mike and I to look at what lies ahead for Nintendo and their next platform. And I think if I remember rightly from last week, we ended up segueing so much that our deep dive ended up changing. What should have been one of the headlines ended up accidentally becoming a deep dive segment. So we're going to circle back to that tonight, unless some more segues occur. But we're going to be looking ahead, sort of hopes and dreams, but also what would get us personally excited about what Nintendo could do with Switch 2. But first of all, we're going to get to the headlines, just looking at some of the news from the last week or so. Had some pretty interesting news revealed on the cusp of the PS5 Pro release, launching tomorrow. And it was confirmation of the actual technical specs. Once again, validating my hatred of leaks and insider scoops. I've always had a problem with that. Let's acknowledge a partial bias is that I'm in no way connected in the industry, so I don't have access to that. I wouldn't have the opportunity to breach an NDA, for instance. I'm not signing any. But equally, those that do have that privileged position, I always feel like they should be honouring the privilege that they have by not just simply shitting out all of these details online. And the big takeaway was that the previously reported, now I'm saying this as not a sort of Digital Foundry technical expert, but the previously reported technical figures relating to teraflops, which is to do with graphical processing power and the output of the console, were significantly lower than what the original insider leaks had suggested. I don't know particularly if that's going to move the needle for anyone. If you're buying the PS5 Pro, myself included, my friend Johnny included, we're doing it because it's an iterative upgrade, and we're into that ecosystem. For us, it's a complete nicety, not a necessity. I don't think it having a lower teraflop than what leaks suggested. I'm saying that not really understanding what that means. It has. I don't think that's going to shift the needle in the perception of it. Reviews have been quite middling. It's fair to say. It seems to be that the consensus is you don't need this, but it's a nice thing if you're into that. That seems to be the general sentiment. Is that kind of the flavour you've been picking up from all of this? And is there anything kind of you wanted to just throw in on that conversation?
Well, first of all, on the specs, I think Sony should have released the specs
I agree.
ages ago. Like when they announced the console release the specs, that's pretty standard, especially when you've got Mark Cerny up there like talking about the hardware. Just
in a 20-minute video as well.
Yeah, like I think places like Digital Foundry already probably called out the teraflops thing, and I don't think it's in the scheme of things. It's because we knew broadly what it was capable of, and I think it's still capable of that. Also, since when have people been given console scores out of 10? Like everyone was saying, oh, it's like IGN gave it 7.5 out of 10 or something. It's like, what?
First of all, what does that mean relative to console hardware?
Yeah, well, we've always had problems with scores out. But I think the base consoles were apparently scored out of 10 by IGN. But has that always been a thing? It just seems really weird to me.
It surprised me too. In fact, I don't remember this gen having them scored in any sense. Or I would be able to tell you what they reviewed the Series X as, for instance. You know.
Yeah. Well, the quality of the console is basically down to the games, especially when they're you know what the operating system's going to be like and stuff. It's bizarre to me. But yeah, the issue seems to be I've watched Digital Foundry's review of it because I think that's probably a good place to start, and they were essentially saying it's not the 45% increase that it was marketed as. It's more like 30% increase in frame rates, and it does so it doesn't hit locked 60 on quality mode across the board, which is obviously it was marketed as you can play quality mode at 60 frames, and that's not so it will dip from 60 occasionally. So they're saying if you've got a VRR, I think it's VRR, isn't it, yes, monitor, then it will do the job because it gets close. It gets in the VRR window where that can activate and it can smooth out the dips that it has. If you don't have VRR, and you probably are better off just spending the money on a VRR screen at this point.
Yeah.
Or if you don't have a big enough screen, or you sit too far away from the screen to notice the quality improvements, then it's probably not for you. But I think the people that are spending that amount of money on it probably have this stuff in their lives already. And I think people coming into PlayStation will just buy the base unit because they're not that bothered about or the Slim, because they're not that bothered about the small updates.
Yes, and I think you've kind of addressed a core aspect of this, which is that this is not, about expanding market share. This is not bringing people in. This is for people that have probably already got a VRR display that's going to best utilize that new tech and leverage it in a way that's actually going to make a tangible difference. I have a VRR TV that I use in my kind of office setup, so I knew that I was kind of, in a sense, future-proofing myself for this iterative upgrade. I think disappointing for a lot of people to hear that it's not sort of hitting those lock 60, particularly where a lot of the advanced ray tracing features as well are still locked behind the 30 frames per second cap. But then a lot of games like Spider-Man, games like Alan Wake are giving people a few more choices in what modes they run and whether they have the unlocked frame rate for VRR. That, I think, is actually the bigger feature. Although in some ways, the PlayStation and Xbox both support VRR display modes, and I use that currently on my PS5. So it is a tricky proposition when you want to try and justify the leap and the investment. Yeah,
there's definitely a lot of fanboy stuff going on. Like I saw Alan Wake 2 is like 860p up using the PSSR upscale to 4K, that's the whole point. That's like a feature of the PS5 Pro is that it can do that. So people saying, "Oh, it's running at 860p" is just stupid.
Just nonsense,
But also, there is a problem in that, like Alan Wake, they've turned on some graphical enhancements for the performance mode, which is the reason why the performance mode isn't hitting 60, and that's like I think developers need to be a bit careful about pushing performance mode like that because for me, performance mode should be locked 60, no
Yeah,
exceptions, basically.
because you're
And that's the whole
compromising
point of it.
visual fidelity, right? That's the
Yeah,
whole.
maybe if you want a VRR mode where it's locked 50 or higher or whatever the VRR window is, then that's should be a separate thing. But for
Mhm.
people who don't have VRR screens, I think you need a locked 60 mode without adding in bells and whistles and stuff. But um, we'll also see the quality. The whole point was quality mode will be 60, but developers are just going to push quality mode, knowing that there's PS5 Pros out there and they can add stuff into quality mode and it will still be locked 30. But
Mhm.
then on the base units, quality mode will run badly. So um, it's a bit of a tricky one. I think if you have certain games, I think Final Fantasy, Metaphor, which I've been playing a lot, runs really badly in places, and that's apparently fixed quite well with PS5
Oh,
Pro. So if there's
nice.
certain games that really you want to try Elden Ring as well,
Yeah, I'd seen that
then it
that
seems
seems
like
to
a
be
good.
the PS5 boost mode seems to be the one that's making real noticeable gains on past titles. That's just sort of doing natively an upgrade without an official patch. Seems to be, well, from what Digital Foundry had covered earlier today, a much more noticeable leap in terms of performance improvement or resolution improvement relative to say the PS4 Pro when we saw that, and it had a very limited number of titles with a similar boost mode style offering. It was quite restrictive in terms of what it actually meaningfully supported. So that side of it, quite happy with that. I think so long as you have a VRR display, which I would imagine if you're someone that's on the sort of cusp of console hardware and are willing to iterate like I am, you probably already have that. But if you don't, and you actually want to have that meaningful leap, your then investment is suddenly starting to creep up a little bit, and then you want to throw in a disc tray as well, and then you want to throw in a vertical stand as well. That's when it starts to get into why the hell aren't you just buying a PC territory? Because that
Well,
point, if
apparently you
you
can't
know,
even buy the disc drives; they just can't get them anywhere. So
yep, I very briefly looked at it because of a couple of games that my wife has that plays on PlayStation. We then both agreed that they weren't both my stuff. I've got a couple of disc games. She's got a couple of disc games. We're not so desperately into them that we need to rebuy them right now or to have a disc tray in order to play them. So we're sticking digital only for that, and I'm not going to go for that. I mean, look, there was scalpers selling them on eBay for like 150 quid. I saw a seller on Amazon for 130. It retails at 99. So it has been inflated by almost 50% over what you should be paying. Why there aren't enough of them out there, even though they have full compatibility with the Slim as well. They work on the digital Slim
yeah.
console, as well as obviously the PS5 Pro. Nonsense, really, that we just haven't seen, any meaningful support from Sony for a thing that people are definitely going to be hungry to investigate. Devo coming into chat saying having to buy a disc reader is insane just to play physical discs. It's indicative, I think, we talked about this before, about where next gen is heading. That sort of push towards digital. Subscription services have done that. Digital versus physical sales, the trends towards that. There's data pointing to that, moving that in that direction. It's just going to be something that disappears. We're just not going to see it. It's going to become a niche thing like vinyl. But you're absolutely right. They are trying to push away from physical media. I agree. It feels very Nintendo. Actually, it feels a little bit schemy of them to sort of restrict stock and then say that it's sold out. It feels like one of the they didn't make enough to cover demand.
Yeah, I think they're using PS5 Pro to test the water on price and digital only, and I think
Yeah.
if adoption is okay, if the pushback's not too massive, then we'll see a similar price for the PS6, and it will be digital only with some sort of hard to get drive to play
Mm-hmm.
backwards compatible games.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that it's certainly them dipping a toe in this approach and seeing whether next gen is going to be viable enough to support that idea. Um, Moving on now, we've got Black Ops, obviously that's been out for now a week or so. We've got Nuketown coming soon with 3 new maps confirmed for the upcoming seasonal update. Really nice to see another 3 completely not remade maps, plus Nuketown as well coming in. They're doing, as always, as they have done for so long, a fabulous job with supporting that game post-launch. Hoping to see some new zombies stuff as well. I mean, we've only scratched the surface of the first map, but knowing that there's a bit of a library there waiting for us, new maps, I think, as we get further in is really exciting. It's going to certainly keep me invested in that game. and having that on Game Pass is a real gift. Early sales figures reported seem to be really strong. Very, very strong. Actually, a slightly increased uplift on PlayStation. It was an increase by 3% of sales on PlayStation. A massive reduction, not enormous, but it was a significant reduction in sales on Xbox. But then you'd expect that. And the digital split seems to be again sort of favouring digital versus physical for this. But from all intents and purposes, we've seen the Steam numbers. The number one Call of Duty game in terms of peak player count on Steam. And supposedly, not only the highest uptick in Game Pass subscribers for a day one release, but also just number of hours played as well. Seems to all be in the pole position and doing really well. So,
were those physical sales or physical and digital? I'd only seen physical, but they might have come out today.
Yeah, I think they were physical. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, be interesting to see. Yeah, I mean, you'd certainly expect there is an impact on Xbox, but it's still top of the paid charts, and I think a lot of people are doing the upgrade to the Vault Edition, as we've seen with other Game Pass games. So, and obviously that doesn't come across in any charts.
No, but that is a metric I'd love to get my hands on, just to understand where people are then seeing the fact that they've come in on 30 quid then for a few sort of cosmetic items that would probably cost more if you bought them all individually from the store. You're much more willing, I think, if you're already locked into that franchise and really want to kind of give it your full attention, you're probably more likely to want to drop a few quid on the upgrade, as we've seen multiple times from Game Pass titles now. So
totally.
It's a smart play by them to have that as an option, and to allow that process is really good. Davo in chat, how is Black Ops 6 Zombies? Anything interesting added or just same old? Very not same old in terms of the last few releases. They've moved away from the open world approach. We did this on stream last week. It's back to the sort of round-based zombies approach, a big map which you unlock sections of and get new guns and upgrades as you progress. It's very fast-paced. You have to basically just continue moving. It is not really viable to bunker down somewhere and just kind of hold a position. But it's very much a callback to the World at War, Black Ops 1, like early days of zombies, and is all the better for it. I think it's really, really cool experience, which kind of I feel actually surprised you and I a little bit of how much we enjoyed it. I think it's a win. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I haven't played a Call of Duty game for a while, other than Warzone, and it's with Black Ops 6 especially. You really do get a lot for your money. Obviously, I've been playing it on Game Pass, but if you bought it for full price, compared to some of the stuff like Battlefield, you don't get single player with. A lot of other games you get a single player and like basic multiplayer. With this, you get like a full campaign, you get really good competitive multiplayer, and you get zombies as well. It's really impressive, and the post-launch support seems really good as well. So
it's superb, and I mean, launching with 16 brand new maps is fantastic. I just those kind of numbers we haven't seen since the sort of early Halo days, and even then, I don't think they would have been that many without them being. None of them are remakes, none of them are re-releases, other than obviously Nuketown we've now seen. But then again, that's been added as a free update alongside the promise of 3 brand new maps. So it's
and like within a week or two of launch as well, which I really like to see, because you see a lot of games now, it's like they launch the game and it's like 2 months before the first season of content drops or something, or longer. It's really nice to have stuff to talk about so soon after
totally
release.
And I think that's exactly what you want. People are going to be diving in desperate to spend as much time as they can in the multiplayer, so it makes total sense that they would then want to have something fresh sort of out of the gate, and they are historically so good at doing that. Their post-launch support has always been really great. Looking at something like Halo Infinite, that dreadful 6-month gap between seasonal updates back in when it first launched. I mean, they're doing, the irony now is they're doing some really disruptive things with Halo. Look at the third-person mode in Firefight, and the addition of the machine gun that very much evokes the first assault rifle. 60 ammo clip. It's a sort of a submachine gun style version of that weapon, and we're not hearing much about it. It's not. It should be dominating given the new approach they're taking. But yeah, I think Black Ops 6 multiplayer. Some people already had Dark Matter after 2 days. What is Dark Matter that you're referencing? Is that a version of the Prestige? thing, or is that something like a particular rank? I'm not sure what that is. So we've got Game Pass now in November. The big, obviously, release last month was Call of Duty. What do we got look ahead towards now, Mike? What's ahead for Game Pass?
Not a huge amount. So StarCraft has come out on PC. The two StarCraft games. We've got Flight Sim, which is a big one this month. I know you're a bit cold on Flight Sim, but I think there's a lot of people looking forward to it. I'll definitely download it and play it. We should try the multiplayer stuff because I think there's a bit more structure to it with this one.
Okay. I always find it a bit too loose, so I think that'd be really nice.
Yeah, I think it's worth just you need to fly over your house or crash a plane into your house or something. It's
absolutely.
And Goat Sim basically is the other one. So
the
but
remastered
they did
one, yeah, cool.
yeah. So they did the thing where I talked about this last month, where they do their post and it's like 8 games on it or something, and then like 6 of them are going to Game Pass Standard, and it's just I feel like the quantity of games is dropping, and I'm writing a feature on this at the moment, but I don't think it's quite noticeable enough yet. But I do feel as though they're using Standard as a way to kind of mask that the quality of the announcements that they're doing is less
high.
because now they're announcing the game once coming to Ultimate, and then they announce it again in 6 months' time.
That
coming
is
to
odd.
Standard, and
it feels like it's panning
weird.
out something with an announcement that already existed. It's just sort of talking now. They're referring to it as tier announcements, aren't they? Rather than it being, just Game Pass is getting this.
But they put them all on the same graphic as if it's one thing. And well, it does suggest I think that there must be a lot of people on Standard, or just they don't tell you when stuff goes onto Core really. So it's interesting, but yeah, not a massive month. Obviously, we've got indie coming soon, so that's the next big one, really.
Yeah, they've had kind of a 1, 2, 3, right? You got Black Ops, Flight Sim, indie. It's kind of been their finish for the year. Davo just in chat mentioning that Dark Matter was referring to the camo for guns, so it's something you get as like a specific look for your guns when you get to a certain level in Black Ops. Thank you for that. I didn't know what that was other than what I'd referred to from a Star Trek episode. So moving on now, obviously there's, and as always seems to be every month, there's a new rumour cooking around some kind of Xbox exclusive franchise making its way to PlayStation. This one actually really surprised me. I would never have imagined there'd be a conversation about Age of Empires jumping over to PlayStation, just given the developer's history and the sort of how tightly associated that is with Windows PC. But rumours of Age of Empires making the jump. Do we think there's credibility here?
Yeah, I think this is quite likely. Age of Empires 2, I remember. Well, I'm going to have to fact check myself, but I'm very sure Age of Empires 2 was on PlayStation 2.
Okay.
And not on any other console. So from that perspective, especially if it was Age of Empires 2, yeah, it was. Especially if it was Age of Empires, the redo of Age of Empires 2, if that went across, I think that would be easy to market, and I think makes a lot of sense. 4 can go. I don't think anyone's that attached to Age of Empires from an Xbox perspective. Like you say, it's a Windows PC thing. I don't think it's an issue. I think it's an easy one for them to do without causing a ruckus. Probably the easiest one.
It's easier.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. David just coming in now into chat. Yeah, you have to complete a challenge in multiplayer to unlock it. For the ones in Black Ops 6, you need 5 kills without dying 3 times. Oh, okay. So it's tied to not your leveling, but specific challenges that unlock those skins. That's cool. That's a nice way of handling that. So then we also have now confirmation from Remedy Games that Alan Wake. I always find they're very transparent with their financials. I don't know whether that's a requirement from their shareholders.
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
If they're very open, especially about I always find it really weird. Well, this game is in early production. This is in pre-production. This is in the exploratory phase, but this one is in full production. They have so many different phases of making games.
I think it's the language. It's this game's not making any money.
Oh. Yes, I don't know. I don't know if it's that flippant, but we made a huge loss. But Alan Wake 2 was revealed that in their recent financial report that it has recouped almost all of its development costs, which actually the DLC has probably helped with that, especially getting it out to people. Not to mention the physical release too. it's right on the cusp, it sounds like, of it recouping its cost and then generating royalties from it. With FBC Firebreak launching on both PS Plus and Game Pass day one next year, they've already done the deal there, so it's likely that sort of slightly more spin-off team budget price releases already will have had its cost covered by that deal, so it's likely they'd see greater returns quicker. But I'm just thrilled. Just after the journey that Alan Wake took to even come out, for it to have taken that long, and also then been such a departure from the original game and such a new approach to telling that kind of story. Just thrilled for them to have found success with it, and it almost felt like an Iron Man 1 in the MCU moment, whereas if this didn't work, then the MCU would not have existed as it does today. I feel like if Control and Alan Wake 2 hadn't landed the way they had, the whole notion of a Remedy-connected universe never would have borne any fruit, and we wouldn't have seen them continue to push that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, really, really great to see. I mean, a developer like that, which has fought tooth and nail to retain its independence and have now, in a really exciting way, the partnerships with Annapurna and Epic Games Publishing, to have both of those larger publishing houses invest in their titles, whether it's to develop TV and film adaptation or to publish a physical release of Alan Wake 2. It's just guaranteeing that they have a future. And it's so exciting when you've got the Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes cooking, FBC Firebreak, Control 2, and you'd have to imagine after that something else Alan Wake. I can't, given the critical response, the Game Awards win, and the positivity around that game, it's not the last time we're going to see that series.
It's nice having, like you said, them being so open about what they're working on, but having that roadmap of we pretty much know what's coming from them, and it all seems like it would be a shock if anything goes wrong. It all seems pretty safe what they've got coming up. So yeah,
and they've secured their future with those meaningful partnerships as well. It just seems that they're just whoever's we've mentioned numerous times about in relation to studio closures or the way first party is being managed by certain publishers. Sort of how silly some of the decision making is, and you just get this sense that these guys at Remedy are just masters of the craft. They know how to do this thing, and they've also secured some financial independence too with the partnerships they've made.
Yeah, I think there was definitely, because Alan Wake, the first one, didn't set the world on fire, and obviously there was kind of the spin-off Xbox Live Arcade one. I think if Control hadn't have performed as well as it did, it was really critically acclaimed, then Alan Wake 2, there was no pressure on them to make an Alan Wake 2. I think it was only because of the success of Control that they felt they could take the risk with Alan Wake 2.
And Quantum Break got kind of lost, didn't it, in Xbox's TV
exactly
push.
and so Quantum Break just died because there's no demand for another Quantum Break. They tried that, it didn't work, and they went back to the bread and butter, I guess. I just like, as opposed to just doing Alan Wake and then Alan Wake 2 and then Alan Wake 3, they seem to be, they try some different things, see how well it works, and then whether to pursue that or whether to go back to something else. And it's very, like you say, very sensible planning from them, really.
Yeah, and they've well supported their titles as well, which is always really nice to see. Control had 2 major DLC expansions, which were substantial. Alan Wake 2's, the first one was a bit more throwaway, but the second one was kind of a much more, certainly tonally was in keeping with the original base game. But Control, the second Control expansion was an Alan Wake tie-in. And it was the thing that set up Alan Wake 2. They used the DLC as a sort of, for those really sort of dedicated fans, to get that sneak peek look at where that narrative was heading. And someone actually, I saw it the other day, someone shared a video of one of the brother of the main character in Control. He's in a prison cell at the oldest house, which is the location of the game. And he's sort of in the middle of one of his sort of rambling monologues. He's really sort of like unhinged. He's had a sort of mental break. He starts rambling about characters and storylines that feature in Alan Wake 2. But this DLC was in the game 2 years before Alan Wake 2 released. So it also gives this sense that they really care about the worlds that they craft, and that they're happy and willing to map out these stories far in advance. It's why I'm so invested in it. I love great storytelling like that, and this news that they have recouped most of their development costs is just really exciting for a game that actually isn't only, it's less than a year old. It's just really, really nice to see that they've been able to find success with that.
And we've said a few times, like, it will have, at some point, it will have a Game Pass release, and it will have a PS Plus release, and they'll be getting some money from those, and that'll just be pure profit. So
yep, Exactly right. We saw Control, both the original and the Ultimate Edition, when it was remade for Series X and PS5. We saw that drop into Game Pass as well a couple of years after release, bundling the DLC together as well in there. We'll see that. Now that the physical release has... I have mine right here somewhere. There it is. The physical release has the DLC in it as well, so it's very likely whatever Game Pass edition we get will be some deluxe edition version. And if it doesn't, if it's just a base game, that then does the same thing that we've seen from Black Ops and the Vault edition, encouraging people to then try out the game and then upgrade via Game Pass, which is great. I'd seen, and I don't know this, but in the last one of our headlines in our planning, you mentioned Dragon Age. And something else going on with that. What's the scoop of Dragon Age? I've kind of deliberately gone dark, knowing that it's going to be my PS5 Pro launch title tomorrow. I kind of haven't continued to follow what's going on with that. Is it sort of ongoing discourse around?
Yeah, the
scripting and
people review bombing it.
Yeah, okay.
A lot's come out about the quality of the writing, which I think some of it is warranted. Some of it can be countered by like Dragon Age has always been a bit hokey.
Yeah,
I mean Mass Effect to an extent has had that as well. I think that's just the writing in some of the BioWare games is like
Mass Effect is a hokey game. There's moments it's hokey cokey. You know what I mean? It's really yeah.
There's people obviously that don't want it to have done very well. There was the stuff about the Steam numbers, which I know you were feeding into on Threads, I think it was. I'm waiting. I think maybe tomorrow we'll see the Xbox charts will feature it because there's a 7-day lag, so it'll be interesting to see where it is in like the paid charts on Xbox compared to. Well, obviously it's not. Well, you think it won't be above Black Ops, but obviously it's not on Game Pass, so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that sort of thing plays out. 2 big releases, where they are in the charts next to each other. And I think we should be getting some other chart data, I would think, in the next few days as well. So, it was just around that really. The Metacritic were like put a statement out, I think, because it was getting review bombed, and which was definitely over the top. And I think if you play BioWare games, Mass Effect, that people were kicking off because you could romance like blue aliens in Mass Effect, and it's just
losers because
BioWare
first of all. Liara, why wouldn't you? Right? Outstanding example of alien physiology. But losers. Like why are you drawing? You're happy with Reapers and a Mass Effect gate, but you draw the line at sexy blue aliens. Losers. Like I don't get it, Mike.
I think I said last time I want to play Inquisition again. I mean, I'm tempted to play them all again, but I think hopefully I can just try and I think hopefully I can just try Inquisition again. But the writings that compared to like Baldur's Gate or something, it doesn't feel like you're playing in a medieval fantasy world. It feels like you're almost like you're in the present day cosplaying as medieval fantasy because all the language is very modern and the themes are very modern, as people have got upset about. So I think you just have to, because you're going in fresh, and I know like medieval fantasy isn't your thing, so it probably won't bother you. It'll probably be quite a good fit for you. But if you're going in like wanting a like high fantasy thing with very kind of archaic language and stuff like that, it's just not. That's not how it's written. It's written
I've never particularly liked it when games get too lore-tastic and they rely too much on...
Oh, I know.
When they call it world building, but really it's just sort of, well, the hydroxyl of power must be connected to the hydroxyl.
It's always a hydroxyl with this.
Absolutely, just if it's what's off the top of my dome. But that to me is always like an immediate turn-off. I just disconnect immediately when it becomes so dense. I don't care. Like, Halo is guilty of it too. The Arbiter and the prophet of regret and reconciliation. It just feels sort of needlessly complex for the sake of sounding lofty. It conflates complicated language with like meanable narrative, and I just don't think those two things connect.
You need some levity as well, which BioWare are really good at. And that's kind of, obviously the world's I don't know the story of Dragon Age, but the world's probably about to end or something, and people are cracking jokes and stuff, which annoys certain people. But Halo is so serious basically all the time, and Master Chief with his gruff voice, and like you say, all the high lore and stuff. It's just if you're playing a 30-hour RPG, you need a bit of variety in
I
the
agree.
stories and in the dialogue and stuff. So
I think it
I
makes
don't
it.
have a problem with it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it makes the characters immediately more engaging as well, because they're not just all high stakes and everything is at the
Yeah.
highest possible stress level. I think it's really nice that they can have a little bit of sort of like variation in there, a bit of levity, like you say. David just mentioning previously from our Alan Wake conversation that the only Alan Wake game I've played was American Nightmare. That was the Xbox arcade spin-off. I didn't actually ever play the original, but how is the second one? Interesting that you've played American Nightmare, but not the first game. They are very much sort of like it's not like a direct sequel. It felt like a spin-off of it, really. The original's amazing. It probably would feel a little clunky now, but actually thinking about it, the remastered version of the game, I think some of the player movement was always a bit clunky, but the actual combat feels so good in the original game. Alan Wake 2 goes full survival horror, especially the sort of dual protagonist narrative that they have. After a certain point, after the opening chapter, you can dynamically choose the order with which you play those characters. You can switch back and forth whenever you want, or just play out one character's story and then it gets to a key point and then you have to play out the other character's story. There's a lot more flexibility with the way that story's told, but it very much leans into survival horror. So if you're into things like Resident Evil, or anything of like Dead Space or anything like in that genre, Alan Wake 2 will tick boxes for you, for sure. So let's dive in. Switch 2, baby. Nintendo cooking. Promised by the end of the financial year, we're going to get some announcement formally of that, I imagine through a direct. I can't see them now appearing or doing anything this year. I think it's too late now. It'll be early next year. They'll do some sort of I imagine probably a quite quick announcement to release turnaround as they've done historically. Confirmation.
Well, GameCube was May, wasn't it? When did Switch come out?
March. January
Yeah,
reveal, March release.
Okay, now.
Yeah. Don't think we get that. I don't think that's coming.
Well,
but lock it in.
that's David.
Yeah. So we need to get a tracker going for all these bets. That'll be another Discord channel. So
Do you think before? Well, let's start off. Do you think before first half of the year?
For release,
the first half of the year we get it? Yeah.
yes. Yes,
Yeah,
that
I
makes
agree.
that makes for great content. Just
Ni-
let's watch him think. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Nintendo are very good at not having stuff leak, and I mean some stuff has leaked about Switch 2, like from Playtonic, putting their
Going to
vague
Nintendo platforms.
yeah. But you know, in terms of the actual design of the console, which always makes you think, can it really be that? Can it be like being manufactured now? If it's because you know they're gonna have to start churning them out for release pretty soon. But the Nintendo are very good at keeping that stuff locked down, so it could happen.
Which adds to the anticipation, the mystery around it, which is why, again, I always hate when stuff gets spoiled. Nintendo confirmed recently that the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible with all Switch games, and also will support Switch Online as well, fact that it supports Switch Online...
Unheard of that you can carry your digital games across between Nintendo platforms.
Unreal, right? Without having to rebuy Mario for the 8th time.
I mean,
which is why
I will be amazed, absolutely amazed, if it's a case of signing in on the new console and your games are there. I just don't see Nintendo it'll be like you have to deactivate your previous console, or there'll be some sort of. They're not just going to give you that stuff.
I think they're going to dazzle you. They're going to dazzle you in the 21st century. They're going to have. Here's my thing. They're going to have inbuilt voice chat.
It's not the
It's coming.
technology. It's not the 21st century thing. It's that I don't think they want to give you the license of the game.
They can obviously do it. This stuff has been available for ages. 360 games are playable on my Series X. Migration is possible technologically, but there'll be something wacky, I'm sure. But no, it's nice to see that this has actually been confirmed as being a thing. You know.
But what a it just sums up Nintendo that we couldn't take that for granted. We've said before, like, will it be? I think we said it was going to be backwards compatible because it's an iteration. It's Switch 2. It's not like some wacky new thing. It's going to look like the Switch. Most of the stuff is going to be compatible. I think I have reservations about whether the Joy-Cons are going to be because they're crap. The Joy-Cons. I would
I
like them to not be compatible, to be honest, because they're so shit.
Yeah, the
Um,
first thing that broke at the Burly Bird arcade was a Joy-Con.
oh, that didn't take long.
No, everything else is fine. I've had no issues with the screens, no issues with the consoles or the controllers, but the Joy-Con, it was also really awkward because it was during someone was on it, and they were playing Mario Kart and they couldn't fire an item.
Oh wow!
It was the
Not
Joy-Con
the thing
held
that normally
horizontally
breaks.
like this, and it was the SL button that would click from the Joy-Con kind of like
Yeah.
the wrist strap thing that you click in. It wouldn't work, and then I took it off, and the button was completely broken. It just wouldn't work at all. No physical damage at all to the front of it. It was just an internal issue.
Yeah, I bought third-party ones, which I don't normally do with controllers, but I'm like at my wit's end with controllers. So many Xbox controllers of mine have got stick drift now. I just am fed up. So, yeah, I'm probably going towards more third-party controllers from now on. But yeah, that was my one thing that might not be compatible, but maybe they'll be compatible in the sense that you could use them wirelessly with it,
Yeah,
but not obviously not
not as a
obviously,
physical
but probably
connection.
not docked.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. And that I think actually you've hit on a really interesting point there, which is that them talking about Switch Online being compatible and your Switch games. That to me does say Super Switch, doesn't it? Like it's Switch 2. It's if they call it the Super Nintendo Switch, that's come on. That's it. It's the NES to SNES branding. They've got it there on a platter, but it's a nice. That's now actually interesting to me, especially because my Switch library, I've got quite a few games on there. The one thing I want to know though is, are we talking digital only compatibility or physical cart compatibility?
I think it will definitely have carts.
Oh, I
What?
hope,
Why do you think it won't?
just because of the wording that they tied that in that announcement. They talked about the Switch
Oh, I didn't
library
catch
and
that.
the Switch Online, as in like the N64 library, the SNES, the NES. They only seem to be referencing digital things. There was no specificity
Well,
about
if they say
hardware.
Switch library, I take that to mean the cartridges.
I took that to maybe my fear is that I've now taken that to mean that it's the games are playable, but only in a digital
Ah,
format.
no, it's got to have cartridges. Come on. I
It's
don't see
not a
the benefit
given.
to them other than, like Davo says, other than forcing people to rebuy everything. I don't see the benefit of getting rid of the cartridges or replacing them with something else.
Mm,
The cartridges are a decent solution for the only company that still has a sizable physical audience, which is I think is
yeah.
still like 50%. They need something, and the cartridge is better than discs. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I hear you. If you said there might be some kind of caveat, like deactivating your old digital games to bring them forward. I feel like the caveat's going to be you can play any Switch game you want on this thing as long as you bought a digital copy of it. Because we don't have cartridges in this thing; it's
Oh,
digital
that'd be
only.
insane.
I could see that being some fairly huge caveat. They'll make moving games as difficult as possible. Yeah, I'm glad, Dave. I'm glad you agree with that. Joy-Cons are also just the worst and incredibly expensive. It is one of the worst controllers I think I've ever used in my life. And yet the Pro controller, the Switch Pro controller, is a delight, and I have them in the arcade as well. They are brilliant. It's like the best and worst. Like the Pro controller is one of the best controllers I've ever used. Best and worst in one platform. Crazy to me. It just makes no sense. Now,
I also
go on.
just from a usability point of view, because you were saying that the worst controller you've ever used,
Yep.
like from a quality point of view, definitely. But then I was thinking they're actually quite good, like ergonomically. But then trying to get my 4-year-old son to play with them, and he just can't understand because he's used to the Xbox controller. Not that he's played games on it, but like you can get get controller toys as well,
Yeah.
where they're kind of laid out like a normal controller. And then he tries to work out how to hold the one Joy-Con. It just doesn't make any sense to him.
Well, and also
Um,
because they have different buttons. Technically, they have you
exactly.
flip the left Joy-Con is just
They look
arrows,
different.
but the right Joy-Con has the letters that are then horizontally when you hold it. When you're on a game like I've seen this all the time trying to set games up where it says like press the right button or press A, and it shows you the symbols 1, 2, 3, and 4 with A on it. But if you're holding a left Joy-Con, kids don't necessarily. They're looking for the letter. They're not looking.
Yeah,
They were looking in the
yeah.
direction.
I'm
And there's
surprised
so many
because
times it's been so
Nintendo.
difficult to use.
Nintendo normally nail that stuff.
Yeah, it was odd.
Yeah, and it's a bit. It's actually the Switch isn't that for like a very young kids. There's more for me. There's get better games on Xbox that are more playable with an Xbox controller, um, than there are on a Switch. But um, yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a segue. But
That's great. Well, I
um,
need to. You just
yeah,
reminded me that I need to get Bluey from Game Pass and show Kira because she's obsessed
yeah,
with that show. She loves Bluey so much. So
yeah, it's all right. It's not bad.
oh,
Worth trying.
it's great. Oh,
The
the
game, I
game. Oh, the
mean,
game.
the
You mean?
game.
Okay. No,
Yeah,
I'm a huge
yeah.
stand for the TV series. I'm like, I've watched it through many times. So what does Nintendo need to do for old Mikey boy to get involved and go? Well, I'm buying a Switch 2 then. What do they
I
need?
can't. I can't imagine what they would have to do for me to buy one.
Oh, high stakes.
For me to buy one at launch, it would have to be like 200 quid. So
Okay.
that's
Okay. So
it's
it's
just
so
not going to happen.
price. So prices.
Um,
It's got a prices right.
prices because I don't think it's going to improve the existing game. I also there's no way in hell Nintendo are like doing an upgrade of Breath of the Wild that looks better on Switch 2 without you having to rebuy Breath of the Wild. That
Oh yeah,
you
for
get
sure.
like
There
patches
is.
to Xbox
Yeah.
games that are Series X patches. There's
Yeah.
just no way in hell Nintendo are
No,
doing
I
that for
completely
free. So
agree. I don't even think they do the approach that Sony have taken with some of their games, where like Part 2 remastered or Horizon remastered. Like Horizon, I have the original game from PS4 that's playable on my PS5. Horizon remastered is, I think it's PS5 only, and it's a £10 upgrade. And they've done that
yeah,
with
there's
Uncharted as well. They are not doing a £10 upgrade.
no chance.
You are
No
buying
chance. And
Breath of the Wild Definitive Edition for
yeah,
50
totally.
quid, maybe 60 quid on
Or
Switch too.
maybe you can get both Zelda games together for like 80 or something.
It'd be 60 quid separately or 120 together.
Yeah.
Davo says, I feel like the Switch 2 should have 60 FPS. That'd be a good selling point. Yes, I think certainly for third-party games that feel very compromised, like Apex Legends runs dreadfully on that thing, but that's a huge game. That we've seen fantastic third-party support from Switch. This is the first Nintendo console I've felt like in over a decade that's had really meaningful third-party support, where every major publisher has published most of their games on it. But they just look and run like sin for a lot of the time. So I agree.
Yeah,
Actually, I think performance is important with that thing.
I'd like to know, and I don't know whether just increasing the like if you played it on a better Switch, whether the games run. I don't know if the OLED Switch plays games slightly better or not. I don't know if Digital Foundry have looked at it. If they even have different innards.
No, as far as I know, it's a better battery life and slightly different, like physical. Like the physical design is slightly bigger. But no, it's just the resolution of the screen
Literally
itself.
the exact same. Otherwise,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, it's not changed any of the innards.
Because it depends, I guess, if the developers have to patch their games to, because you get some Xbox and PlayStation games that are have locked frame rates that developers have to patch out. I could see Nintendo patching like Breath of the Wild so the frame rate is better if it is locked at the moment. But yeah, any graphical, if they feel they can push the graphics, then they'll make you buy it again. And I don't know, where do we think it's going to sit hardware wise? Do we think Xbox One Series S? Is that
I mean, that would be
the
my lowest expectation of that. I think that they would.
you think it can go higher than Series
I
S?
do, yeah. I think it's 7 years old. This thing now, 2017. Don't forget. Whereas, and I think Nvidia, if they're going to use the off-the-shelf stuff that the other two platforms have, and what the Switch used too, that mobile tech has advanced a fair bit in the last few years. I think we're going to see some more horsepower from this thing. I hope
But I
so.
mean,
For the price that they're likely to sell it at.
I mean, the new Series X is like 600 quid though. So if they're trying to go for Series X hardware, I just don't know how releasing next year. I don't know how you could possibly get that into a hand. Like I think if Xbox release a handheld, I think it will be Series S level if it's out next year. It depends if it's the next gen one or not, but
Yes.
so I think that then the Switch would be a direct competitor to that. But I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I from a price point of view, I think if they can do so, if they do it at Series S, hopefully they can keep it cheap, especially if it looks a lot like the current Switch, and probably a lot of the
Yeah,
bits and
actually,
pieces are cross compatible.
yeah, and thinking about that, one of the smartest things they did with it was made the screen, top out at 1080p when docked, so that it was only 720p in handheld because you didn't need the
No,
screen
it's,
size. You're not getting the benefit of that increased resolution. So keeping that down, I think, actually makes more sense, especially if they can use some of those sort of upscaling techniques that we've seen on PS5 Pro and things like that. They were also mentioning about the base console storage. Yeah, the 32 gigabyte
oh, it's
onbyte storage
trash.
is shocking. I mean, like games like Apex and Fortnite, like you can install one of them to it, and that's it.
So annoying. Like you just SD cards, you can buy like whatever huge SD cards for like 20 quid now. I just wish they'd invested a bit more
Mm.
in that in the base console because it's really frustrating. I
Besides,
mean, I just need to get a better memory card for it, but I just
yeah,
can't be bothered.
but besides price, either hardware features of the console or something software related, what have Nintendo got to do to get their hooks in you?
I uh, I can't. I don't think there's anything hard. I just can't see what they would come up with hardware wise. It would be about the games, and I
Okay.
think we can only realistically expect Metroid. I'd be impressed if they have something out of left field that we're not like. What are we due that
A mainline 3D Mario game is probably
yeah, just I don't like. I
due.
haven't played a 3D. I'm on my own here, but I haven't played a 3D Mario game for like a decade, so that isn't. No, for me, it's Zelda, Smash Bros. Generally
Yeah,
that gets me in. Um, Literally, that's when I buy Nintendo consoles. Is when there's a new Zelda or Smash Brothers game. And Smash
nice.
Brothers, we've said this before. We've had the ultimate version of Smash Brothers, ultimate version of Mario Kart, so don't need either of those. So it's difficult. Um, and I'm still on Breath of the Wild, so I've still got a Zelda game to play.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a tough sell. Yeah, it's a tough sell for me. Um,
It's interesting.
how about you? Because I mean, you're going to buy it anyway.
Yep.
At least one.
Yeah.
So
Living the Nintendo family dream over
is
here.
is there anything? I'm gonna flip it for you. Is there
Mhm.
anything Nintendo could do? So tell me the price where it would be too much for you. Is
O-
there a price that's
Over
well? I mean,
500
there
quid
is.
is over 500 quid's too much for me for
Okay, and is
that.
there something they could do that you'd be like, oh, I'm out? So the physical thing, say it didn't play.
Yes, that I'd struggle with that massively because of their pricing, because of their software pricing. Nothing ever gets discounted meaningfully, and I am not as invested in open world Zelda, so that series doesn't move the needle for me at all. Um, yeah, I think removing physical would be a big issue for me with that, and which I never thought I'd be saying, given my preference of digital gaming through Game Pass and obviously now getting the PS5 Pro. And I bought the Switch thinking this was going to be my first all digital console, and it was only the pricing and the availability of the significant discount that physical offers on Switch that I ended up going more that way. I've got tons of physical Switch games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it will. Me too. I don't think it will happen. But is there anything else? Can we think of anything weird that like Nintendo? Because
Um,
they do like to do something weird, but again, they have these iterative consoles
yeah,
that they don't tend to
this
reinvent the
is
wheel on.
this
But
isn't. I don't think it's going to be a failure like the Wii U was, but this feels like a Wii to Wii U. It feels like a kind of iterative step.
well, but it's interesting. You mentioned NES to SNES.
Mm,
They've been very even Wii to Wii U was a big change, and all that none of the games went carried over
mm.
properly. Nintendo haven't actually done that before. They've done it with handhelds where they've kind of iterated. But I feel like
Yeah, like 3DS to
say they
3DS
call it
XL or
say
something.
they call it the Super Switch. I just don't think that's clear enough that that's actually a new generation of console. I think people will feel like it's
Which is, I suppose,
a
is trickier now that the generations are more blurred than they've ever been. There's less synchronicity between those three platforms releasing stuff, and no more so are we going to see that with the Xbox and PS, whatever comes next for those platforms. They're all in their own cadence now. Nintendo was always the outlier, and Xbox and PlayStation traveling together. But it's
do
kind of, it's tougher to call now what the generations mean.
do Nintendo have a bit of a problem with their lineup in terms of because Smash Brothers and Mario Kart are out the
Mm.
window to a degree. If I can't see how they can possibly announce a new Smash Brothers game. If they announce a new Mario Kart game, then it has to be something weird, probably, which wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily. Um, the only one I can think of would be Animal Crossing. I think if they launched with a
Mm.
new Animal Crossing game, given how well that one did, that could really get some hype, and you get that because that appeals to very, very, very broad
Yes.
non-gamer
That
people.
Animal Crossing for Switch blew that series up in a way
Yeah,
that we hadn't. It's always been popular, but not that level. That sort of like cutting through into the real mainstream mobile gaming space. That audience tapped into Animal Crossing for sure. Devo in chat mentioned again, Nintendo really good at keeping games at full price and still managing to sell. Yeah, I mean the classic is the 3D All Stars collection, isn't it? Where they sort of released that and then made the physical copies and digital copies delisted in order to jump up demand, and yet they kept the price
do,
exactly the same. You know,
do you think they take this opportunity to increase the price of their games
got
to bring
60.
it in either in line or because
Wait,
what are they now, 50 or
I
60?
think they're 50, but is
Okay, so do you think they put them to 60?
I swear something was 60 recently. Is Tears of the Kingdom 60? Why don't we do a live fact check? It won't.
I was going to say,
Guys,
it won't have dropped, will it?
It won't be at a sale. We don't have to
No.
worry about that. Yeah, because I think my Nintendo Switch lighting. Oh yeah, maybe. Let's see where they're at right now.
That'd
Then
be
I'll be able
good.
to call
I
it.
think that's a good shout. I think
That's good.
I could see that. They'll love that. And then the gen after that will be 70, won't they? And they can still be like, oh, we're cheaper than cheaper than Xbox.
You
And
know what I said
PlayStation.
about yeah, exactly, yeah, by £10. I said about it's gonna have voice chat. I don't care. Not now. Discord's in my life. Discord solved
No,
the
well, it would
problem
be
for me.
nice if that they could certainly, you should have the apps on the Switch. You should have
Yeah,
Netflix and stuff on the
have
Switch.
have
It's a
the
no-brainer.
have the Discord support natively on here. If they don't want to do it themselves, just let Discord have an app on here or something. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
60 for Tears of the Kingdom. They're 60
Okay.
already, so I don't think that moves until the next one. They're topping out at 60.
But you say is that the only game they've released at 60 though?
Don't know that, and that would be a
Because yeah, okay.
tougher one to answer.
Well, I still feel as though that will be their standard from now on. And say they do Breath of the Wild for Switch 2, it'll be
Yeah,
just be 60.
Davo's saying they're Switch games generally are 50 quid. Yeah, that's accurate for digitally. They're sort of 49.99. I've seen a lot of games actually for 40. That's sort of 40. You mentioned 45.99 there, Davo, as
You can
well.
often get it in the supermarkets and stuff
Yeah, for like
for a
40.
lot less. And then you look on a console and it's like whatever, 55 or
Yeah,
50. It's like
I've seen some
horrific.
32.99s in like Asda and other supermarkets. I've seen some 40 quid
Yeah.
versions of those games. Buying off the console is expensive. Yeah, just the digital store version of it is pricey, no question. Yeah, I think not supporting physical media from Switch 1, I think, would be a real shame. I think that would be really disappointing. In terms of like dreams, I would just love to see a GameCube online collection. Online enabled GameCube games.
We've said this every Nintendo. Well,
I know.
we definitely said this with the Wii U.
Because the
and then we
Wii
said it
U
with the
though
Switch.
did have a virtual console.
Yeah.
It's only when we came out of that into the Switch that we were like, come on now. 7 years
But
we've been promising that
it's
Eurogamer
been limited
article.
though, hasn't it?
You know, yeah, no, it is. Of course it is. But I think Rare were less of a factor. They only released Star Fox Adventures, right? On GameCube, they were less of a factor. I think the lack of the complete Rare library, which we've seen a few games like the Banjo games, GoldenEye, etc., have now appeared on Switch Online. But I think there's less of an implication. Nintendo have more of the games that we would want, just because it's the wacky era of their development. They were really experimental and odd, and I just want those games to give me Mario Kart Double Dash Online. Let me just eat that up. Best one. The best one, Mike, and I know you disagree.
I do. I cannot. I'm not
Can't
denying
even hide it.
I disagree massively.
Fully. Dave, I still find it insane that Smash Brothers is still full price after 7 years or so. Yeah, you're right. With terrible online. Just make online functional in these big, massive games. You could do it with Mario Kart, but Smash Brothers was a big no.
That is the one thing, is that the the Switch Online where you can do split screen over the internet is a really good innovation that they've brought. That's the one thing that I will give them. And yeah, if they could do that with GameCube games, that would be cool.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I still wouldn't buy it. So.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into the latest episode of System Link. Really appreciate Dave obviously seeing you in the chat tonight as well. We'll put up the video on demand version of this podcast up on our YouTube channel. You can find us on all of the various socials at Burly Bird Media. We've just joined Threads. We've followed the Xbox guide and joined Threads, so we are at Burly Bird Media on there as well. I managed to get such a weird name for our company that nowhere else had it, so that we haven't had to do any wacky underscores. And I know you've managed to get Xbox guide. I need to update that as well. I'll update that on our screens here. You managed to get the underscored version, so it's just the Xbox guide on Threads.
Yeah.
What is cooking with the Xbox guide right now, Mike? What can people look forward to? What have you released recently?
So I did a video version of the top 10 Game Pass games, which is on YouTube now. I am in the process of doing an article just about kind of analysing the Game Pass releases for October and seeing how they stack up. Like I said earlier, I feel like the quality overall is maybe decreasing slightly. And then probably I'll be looking at Black Ops and Dragon Age chart positions and trying to work out how they're doing overall. In the next week or so.
Lovely. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We will see you next time for Burly Bird Live this Saturday. Not sure what we're playing, although we're probably leaning towards a bit of Call of Duty, I think, this weekend. We'll see how we feel.
Bring back Nigel Knife.
Yeah, Nigel. Gotta get Nigel Knife back in. Shout out to Stephen Murray there. One of the best recurring bits I think we've ever had. David, just quickly wrapping up now. Speaking of Game Pass, I did realise recently that the ultimate price went from 13 to 15. Yes, it has had a price increase too.
I literally let my Game Pass expire, waiting to do the thing. I just couldn't be bothered. I'm such a Satya Nadella just loves me because I was ready to do it, ready to buy. You could buy before the price increase. You could buy all the stuff and stack them up. I just couldn't be bothered, and now it's on whatever 15 quid.
Yeah,
rolling.
He's loving you for that. He didn't stack them, but yeah. Thanks, folks, for tuning in, and we will see you next time for Burly Bird Live this Saturday. Keep an eye on all of our socials, our Discord as well, to keep up to date with all the latest news. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.